Entitled woman who thought she owned the park, justice served. So this happened a few months ago, and I still think about it. It was one of those rare moments when the universe actually balances out a situation perfectly. I live near a park where a lot of people from the neighborhood go to relax, walk their dogs, or just hang out. There's also this homeless guy, I'll call him Tim, who's been living near the park for a while. Tim's actually a pretty nice guy. He doesn't bother anyone, always picks up after himself, and even helps clean the park sometimes. He's got a little spot with a bench and some blankets, and that's where he stays. People in the community sometimes bring him food or coffee, and he never asks for anything. Well, one day I was out walking my dog, and I saw this woman, classic Karen vibes, marching over to where Tim was sitting, minding his own business. She had one of those expensive yoga mats under her arm and a tiny dog on a leash. You could just tell she was looking for a reason to cause trouble. She stops in front of Tim and starts berating him about how he shouldn't be in her park, that he was ruining the view, and how he needed to get a job and stop being lazy. She was loud, rude, and drawing attention, but Tim just sat there, calmly explaining that he wasn't hurting anyone and had every right to be in the park like anyone else. She, of course, wasn't having it. She threatened to call the cops and have him removed for trespassing, even though it's a public park. A small crowd started forming because she was causing such a scene. A couple of us tried to step in, but she wasn't listening to anyone. She eventually pulled out her phone and called the cops, making it sound like Tim was some kind of dangerous vagrant harassing her, which was a total lie. Here's where it gets good. The cops arrive, and this woman puts on her best victim performance, saying how she feels threatened and unsafe with Tim around. Tim stays totally calm and tells the cops exactly what happened, but it's clear the woman expects them to side with her. But the cops don't. Turns out, one of the officers knew Tim. The cop says, "Oh, hey Tim. How's it going?" They talk for a minute, and it's clear this officer knows Tim isn't some dangerous guy, just a homeless man down on his luck who's never caused trouble. The cop then turns to the woman and says, "Ma'am, this is a public park. Tim has every right to be here, just like you do." Her face completely changes. She starts sputtering, saying how it's unacceptable that people like him are allowed in places like this. She keeps pushing, asking if the officer can do something to remove him. The cop's response: "Ma'am, if you keep causing a disturbance, you will be the one removed from the park." Boom. You could hear a pin drop. The crowd was loving it at this point. The woman huffed and puffed, grabbed her dog, and stomped away, clearly embarrassed that her entitled attitude had backfired. After she left, some people in the park came over and gave Tim some food and drinks, just to show support. The cop hung out for a bit to make sure everything was okay and chatted with Tim like they were old friends. It was such a satisfying moment, seeing this entitled woman get shut down and realizing that just because you're loud and obnoxious doesn't mean you're in the right. Tim's still there at the park, and now it seems like people look out for him even more. Justice served. Story 2. AITAH for refusing full custody of my daughter after my husband asked for a divorce. I 31F have been together with my husband Alex 33M for 7 years, married for 4 years. Alex was always really excited about the prospect of children from the beginning of our relationship. I was always on the fence. I've seen how hard single moms have it. I promised myself I'd never be in that position. Plus, I work as a software engineer. I love my career and I didn't want to give it up to be a mom. After Alex and I got married, those fears went away. We were very much in love, I felt safe with him, I told him my fears and he said all the right things to make them vanish. So we tried for a baby and had our daughter Ramona 2 years after we got married. The pregnancy and first year with the baby was extremely hard on me. I had multiple health problems during and after the pregnancy that were life-threatening and altered my body permanently. I was disabled and nearly died once in the 6 months after I gave birth, and during this time my husband grew distant and became angry frequently when we'd speak. I spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital and was unable to work, so a lot of the baby care went to him during this time. It was all I could do to stay alive and get better, being separated from my daughter and husband so much. Eventually I did get better enough to help more with the baby, but after I was discharged from the hospital he barely spoke to me. I want to clarify early that at no time did I ever neglect our daughter if I was able to care for her. I leaned on him a lot during this period, but I was also fighting for my health and my life so that I could continue to be there for her. If I had pushed myself too hard I would have made it worse, or be dead. We stayed in a state of limbo like this for a while. I was still in recovery, not back to 100% yet but able to resume a somewhat normal life, and we shared more responsibility with Ramona. I tried talking to him many times over the next 6 months, but it was more of the same thing. He wouldn't speak to me, or he'd get angry and every little thing I did, insist I was making things up and blame me for somehow criticizing him. It was a constant deflection from whatever was bothering him. I got another job about 9 months after the pregnancy, and things seemed to improve for a while, or at least I thought. Not long after Ramona's first birthday, Alex served me with divorce papers. He said he'd fallen out of love with me a long time ago and he was ready to start anew. I was in shock. Things had started to improve between us, but he explained that was because he'd decided to leave and he felt less unhappy. It was a Saturday when this happened, so I made sure he was going to be home to care for Ramona for the weekend, then I packed a bag and left until Sunday evening. I didn't say where I was going, and truthfully I didn't really go anywhere but drive. I drove 2 states over by the time I stopped. I needed to think. When I got back Sunday evening, he was pissed I'd left him alone with our daughter. He's always seemed really put off anytime he had to care for her alone, this time was no exception. I sat him down and very carefully said, I will grant you a no-contest divorce but I am not accepting full custody of Ramona. If he was only pissed before, he was explosive now, and everything he hated about me finally came out. That I was a horrible mother, that I wasn't strong enough to even be a mother, that I was too weak to carry a child and now I was abandoning her. I very calmly stated that I loved her dearly and would not abandon her, that I would pay child support and visit her every other weekend, that I would be there for her in any way I could, but I had been very clear with him when we got married that I would never be a single mom. He became borderline violent at this, grabbing things like he was going to throw them and screaming that I was ruining his life on purpose. I wasn't going to stick around to be talked to like this, so I went and checked on Ramona, gave her a kiss, then grabbed my bag and left again. A couple days later his mother texted me. He'd left Ramona with her for a few days and she had some nasty things to say to me. That a mother should never leave her child, etc. I told her it wasn't her business and that her son doesn't get a free pass to restart his life because his wife nearly died when she was pregnant and he became resentful with the responsibility. He's also blown up my phone asking me when I'm going to come back, so, you can take your daughter, but I've only replied, I've already told you what's going to happen here. I love my daughter immensely and I will be a provider for her, I will always support her, but I won't be her primary parent. So, Ada. Story 3. Oh, you can take your kids to work. I live in a rural farming town and this happened at the local feed store. Think like Tractor Supply but a mom and pop owned version. I went to get my usual stuff, chicken feed, dog food, etc. and had my 5-year-old daughter with me. She's looking at the horse riding equipment as she is dying to start lessons. I walk over and we start discussing what she likes and what she needs to start when a lady comes over and just starts talking about horses. I admittedly know nothing but assumed she was just an excited fellow equestrian who overheard my daughter and I. Then she starts asking for recommendations on stuff, and I admit I'm not expert and she might need to ask someone else. This lady gave me the dirtiest look and went on and on about how employees should be knowledgeable about their products. Completely oblivious to what she was hinting at, I give a polite chuckle and say, "Yay, the family that owns this place is great, they would be more help than me." She again suggests that employees should be knowledgeable about their products in store and asks me for a specific type of rein, and I again suggested getting someone else as I'm just here with my daughter picking up a few things. She looks down at my daughter and back up at me and says, "I didn't know the feed store doubled as a daycare, you shouldn't be allowed to bring such a small child to work." Absolutely dumbfounded, I say I don't work here and I'm just letting my daughter get her excitement out by looking at the products in the aisle we were in. Again, I suggest asking an actual employee because the family who owns the shop is terrific and has been in business for decades. With a very snotty look, she says, I know you work here, I've seen you here almost every time I come in. You must be having a day off, but you could at least help me. I ducked out of the conversation to chase my daughter, who wandered off and get checked out. As I'm leaving the store and giving county gossip with the clerk, who is a friend of mine, the lady walks up and complains how unprofessional I am and how even for a family business small children shouldn't be allowed to join employees on their shift. The clerk looks at her like she's plumb dumb and tells her, our customers are welcome to bring their children in, I don't know why they wouldn't be allowed. The lady still does not get it and just huffs some more about how we're lying to her. I pick up my hat, have it loaded in the truck, and as I'm driving off, this lady flipped me the bird. I'm still confused how someone who frequents the only feed store in the county, that's been running for decades, and thinks there's some wild conspiracy going on about me working there. Gave me a good chuckle though. Story 4. Throwaway Ida for taking my daughter's college fund back after she said she was going no contact. A bit of background. I, 45F, am a single mom of 2 kids, Ella 18F and Jake 16M. My husband died when the kids were young, and I've worked extremely hard to support them both emotionally and financially. My husband left behind a life insurance policy, and I've been saving part of that money for their college education. Since she was a little girl, Ella has always dreamed of going to a prestigious college. We've had many talks about how important education is, and I made sure she knew that the fund I was building for her and Jake was specifically for their education. I wasn't able to afford luxuries like vacations or new cars, but I wanted to make sure they wouldn't be burdened with student loans. Recently, though, things have become strained with Ella. She started dating a guy, Matt, 19M, a few months ago, and I feel like her personality has completely changed since. She's become distant, rude, and dismissive of anything I say. She said hurtful things like I smother her, or treat her like a child. I've tried giving her space, but last week, during a particularly bad argument, she said she was going no contact with me once she went to college and would never look back. I was devastated. After everything I sacrificed, to hear that she'd cut me out was heartbreaking. I didn't want to react out of emotion, so I waited a few days to cool off, but eventually, I made the decision that if she truly wanted nothing to do with me, then I wasn't going to fund her education. I told her if she's planning to go no contact with me after college, she should consider her fund off the table, and I'd split it between Jake and myself for other things. She exploded, calling me vindictive, manipulative, and selfish. She thinks I'm trying to control her by dangling the money over her head. I've talked to a few friends about this, and reactions have been mixed. Some say I'm within my rights because the money is mine and I can do with it what I see fit. Others say that I'm punishing her for her feelings and that I'm being controlling by using the money as leverage. So, Ida for taking back my daughter's college fund after she said she was going no contact with me. Update. First of all, I want to thank everyone who gave advice and genuinely tried to help. After going through the comments, I think the best thing I can do is try to talk things out with Ella. She's my daughter, and she always will be, and I will always be there for her if she wants me to. As for the money, I'm going to hold on to it for now until I have cleared up whether she is being abused or influenced by her boyfriend, but I won't spend it on Jake or myself. To those saying I must be abusive or controlling, I want to make it clear that I've never used the college fund to try to control her. The idea of withholding the money didn't even come up until she said she wanted to go no contact. Story 5. AITAH for moving out of the house and breaking up on phone after she explicitly said, I want you to understand that we are done. And storming out of the house. This is going to be a bit long, so if you want some context read, if not go to the end. My ex-girlfriend, 28F, and me, 32M, lived together for 10 months and were in a relationship for 3 years total. The relationship was good, we had minor issues and discussions like all normal relationships have, and after 2 years we started living together. That's when some stuff started to not be minor issues but extremely bad arguments that always ended in the same way, not being talked about. First issue. Our mothers did not get along that well. They started real friendly going out together for trips and to the mall and stuff like that, but then all of a sudden my mother, let's call her Lily, said that her mother, let's call her Paula, was a bit intrusive and did not want to keep seeing her. Now I was put on a bit of a weird situation where I had to explain why the sudden disappearance, in my mild panic. I just thought of telling the truth, having confidence that my ex would not overreact over this. Well, I was wrong. Nothing was ever the same between my mother and my ex. They did not hate each other, but it was weird. Like 3 weeks after we moved together, an argument broke out about what we were gonna do for Christmas. Paula had called Lily to invite her so we could all be together, but something that was lost in the telephone game, and Lily, though she heard that this should have been my ex inviting her, not Paula. Well, I mentioned that to my ex, trying to tell her that her mother should not be saying that, and all hell broke loose. She said that Lily was always trying to tear us apart and that she never liked her, and pushed me hard into not spending Christmas and New Year's with my mother. I complied, and it was the worst Christmas I ever had because my mother was sending 300 messages per second saying I was being naive and manipulated, and on the other side saying they were the ones manipulating me. I just bottled up, trying to survive through December in the hopes that with enough time everything would cool down between them. Second issue. I really don't want to make this be a bad thing, maybe is something I could not handle, but she is a doctor going through her residency, and that is a career that demands everything from you and everyone around you. When she was home, she was always tired. Our time together at home basically consisted on she falling asleep after dinner while watching TV together. I had no issue with this really because I could go and play video games, but the problem is after a while this gets a bit annoying since that's all I was allowed to do. If I wanted to go out to play volley, she said jokingly, "You should stay with me, we could do something together," which evolved to, "Maybe you should not go, the volleyball is the problem." If I wanted to go out with my friends, she'd get a bit mad even though I always invited her and was always writing me about when would I get home, that I said 9 p.m. and it's 10 p.m, where are you, etc. Until she would not answer the phone anymore, at which point I knew she was mad and it would be an argument when I got home. Third issue. So sometimes when these arguments happened, she would attack me with the same line, "This is why we are gonna break up." If we talked about having kids, which I do not think we were prepared to have, I'd say I'm open to have them but not right now. She would say she wants them right now and 2 of them. And when I asked who was gonna take care of them, she'd of course say, my parents. Of course my mother was not included in this. She was never allowed to set a foot inside our house again. But when I started to make other arguments, that's when the line was used, "This is why we are gonna break up." Marriage. Maybe wait until you finish your residency in 3 years. No, if you don't propose in the next year, we break up. Living in the suburbs. I really like the city, I'd like to stay here or at least close. No, this is why we are gonna break up. So I started not talking about these fundamental issues, because it was not an open negotiation, it was her way or breaking up. Final issue. Elder. She has always been a bit insecure. All female friends I had to cut ties with. All new girls in her life or mine were bitches by default and wanted to take me away. So of course I caught her checking my phone for the 4th time, and she obviously found a conversation with a female friend that she had told me she did not want me talking to. Was not even a damning conversation, but of course she lost it and called me all the names in the book and angrily told me we were done, that I should leave the house because I was the one texting other girls. She then got ready and was leaving the house and told me again, and I quote, "I want you to know we are done. I told you I did not want you talking to other girls, we are completely and absolutely done," and stormed off. So am I the asshole for taking her word and leaving? I think all these issues I described came all back, the ones I could not negotiate, all of them became a solid no in my mind. So I left. She called me 4 hours later that night saying how could I do this to her, leave the house and just leave her there all alone, that she was just venting and that of course she was gonna come back to have a conversation. Well, I explained to her that I could never tell her anything because I was walking on eggshells all the time trying to not upset her and getting the We are breaking up for this, line, and that I just took her word for granted. She said we were finished and I assumed that was what she wanted. Ada.
Story 6. A Karen tried to ruin the Northern Lights experience for us. My wife and I were one of the fortunate people that got to see the Northern Lights where we live. I didn't fully plan on where we were going to view it, so we stopped by a small local park on the way home that offered decent views of the sky. The park technically closes in 30 minutes, so we spent most of the time admiring the Northern Lights in peace. We were about to leave when the park had 5 minutes left until it closed. Out comes a car from out of nowhere driving towards us as we were entering our car. She rolled down her window and asked us annoyingly, "What the hell are you guys doing here?" I innocently said that we were looking for a clear spot to view the Northern Lights. Then she said something along the lines of, "Well, that's a good reason for me to call the police on you because you're not supposed to be here." Once again, we made sure it was legal to enter the park because the last thing we wanted was to trespass and get ourselves into trouble. There was no reason for the police to come, and I realized that she's the kicker here is that we live in a rural part of Pennsylvania and her car had a huge sticker of someone running for the PA House of Representatives for our local district. It's known that PA is a crucial swing state, and our district is purple. I already knew who I was going to vote for, and it wasn't that person the lady is supporting. So I pretended to be an apathetic voter and asked about who that person is. She went on about that person, and how great she was. I then said, "Well, I wasn't going to vote, but you just convinced me to go out of my way to register and vote against her in whatever party she's in." Her mouth opened wide, and she was left speechless. She then called me racial slurs and threw insults at me. I didn't bother to listen, but I said, "Democracy's a bitch, isn't it? Maybe you should mind your own business next time," while rolling up my window. As we left, I heard a noise that sounded like a popped tire as she kept driving. We were the only 2 cars there, and my tires are fine. Story 7. I am seriously considering outing my brother to our parents. For some context, this all started happening when I was in 8th grade. My brother is 1 year older than me and was in the 9th grade. When I was in the 8th grade, I already had low self-esteem and would constantly eat lunch alone and in bathrooms. I would also skip meals. I had no friends and it didn't help that I would get bullied sometimes. For 9th grade, I switched out of that school and started going to the school my brother went to for his 9th grade year. He was in 10th and I was now in 9th. He was a part of the swim team so I'll joined it as well, thinking that I could make some friends now. He must have been talking behind my back or something because nobody ever talked to me and throughout the entirety of 9th grade one was still a loner. My brother would also constantly tell me to kill myself and said this in front of his friends. They never spoke up or nothing. Some even entertained it. I would cry literally every night. This was when I got super depressed and, though undiagnosed, I think I had an eating disorder. Around December of that year, homecoming was coming up and Elle actually got asked out by someone on the swim team, let's call him Jake, fake name. I was all excited to go but ended up not going with him because he started acting weird and sort of stalking me and wouldn't leave me alone. Even though it was weird, I was still happy that someone finally liked me. At this time, I also didn't know my brother was gay yet. Months later, after things have sort of settled down, I literally find the worst thing on my brother's phone. He was in the shower and I heard his phone ding with a message so Elle went and checked it because I was nosy, wanted to know what friend was texting him since he hung out with them so often and because I didn't have any friends and wanted to know what they do. It was a message from Jake and I was wondering why the hell my brother was still talking to Jake even after I told him what a creep he is. Come to find out that Jake and my brother have been secretly dating and they had come up with a plan because they both weren't out to their parents. They decided to try to get me to date Jake so that they would stay undercover about their own relationship. In short, the guy the first thought liked me, was secretly dating my brother and trying to date me too to use as a decoy. I was so mad, I literally wanted to kill my brother in that moment. I don't have any issues with him being gay, I don't care about that, but when I scrolled through his messages I was so close to outing him. But I didn't, because I wanted to be above that. For my 10th grade year, I actually started improving and fixed my mental health. All was going well until my brother joined the same elective as me in the 2nd semester. I don't know what makes me so unlikable, but as soon as he joined, all the friends I had the potential of making basically ditch me for him. I get that he's older, but it still hurts. At this point, I am being ignored in the class that I joined first. He starts up again with this thing about telling me to kill myself. He calls me a bitch a lot, and he's more open about being gay with his friends. Now, 11th grade current, his friends are short with me all the time. He calls me a fat ass, I'm not even fat, tells me to kill myself and won't even give me the time of day to try talking with him about how I feel. I feel guilty even thinking about outing him, but I seriously hate him at this point and don't care what happens to him. He's struggling with college stuff and is so unmotivated and such a judgmental and hateful person, it's just astonishing. Our parents have been trying to help him, but I honestly think they're wasting their time. He clearly doesn't give a shit where he goes. I can't stand to see my parents working their asses off for someone who disrespects and disregards them all the time. What do you all think of this? I am seriously considering outing him, but I don't want to. I mean, my mother constantly asks me what I think is wrong with him and why he is the way he is, and in a way, I think it could help him. My dad is homophobic unfortunately, but I think my mother would accept him. We live with our mom and not our dad anyways. I know my mom wouldn't kick him out or cause him harm, it would just be a reality check for him. Please let me know. Story 8. I, 22F, lived in someone's pig pen for a night on a dare. Last spring break, my friend group and I were staying at an Airbnb near a large farm. We were out on the porch when the neighbors, the owners of the farm, came driving by, leaving their farm. We waved and they jokingly asked us to look after the farm since they'll be gone for the next day or two. No one thought much of it. Flash forward to later that night when everyone is very tipsy, we play truth or dare. They started normal but got increasingly unhinged. When I came up with a really good truth question that exposed one of my friend's flings, she retaliated by daring me to spend the night on the neighbor's farm. I accepted since I thought it was just going to be like camping, no one was there, it sounded like fun, and I was tipsy. My friend then says that I should stay the night with the animals, specifically the pig pen. The rest of the group laughed and supported this idea. So I got a little more dressed and we all walked the long way over to the farm and found the pig pen. It was fairly large with lots of mud, a portion of indoor-like space, and a feeding trough half filled with who knows what, and of course had a bunch of pigs. I climbed the fence harder than I thought given how short the fence was and tried to find a spot to camp out. Eventually my friends all left and I fell asleep after a while. They came back to get me the next morning and we all went back to the Airbnb, with me covered in mud and smelling like pig. My friends told me I had been there for approximately 10 hours. We ran into the farmer again later in the week and he told us a story. Apparently me being in the pig pen caused the pigs to get spooked once the farmer returned. Some ran off when he opened the gate and tried to feed them. Because he was an older man and couldn't keep up, especially since the farm was super big, that they would likely just stay on another part. It took him almost the entire day to wrangle them back into the pen. I feel bad I made him waste a day for all that. Story 9. After being friends with someone for over 10 years and having a close friendship, I, 26M, am planning to end my friendship with 27F. A little bit of context, my friend and I were friends for years and I knew my place and was definitely in what I considered unexplored, friend zone, territory. Which I was fine with. I'm bi and have had plenty of girls who I am just friends with. However, 4 years into this friendship she one day unexpectedly made a romantic advance. I, being 1000% caught off guard, but not opposed, allowed it to happen. We had a little FWB situation going for a while, but while I wanted it to be more official she would make excuses for why it couldn't be more than that. Then perhaps after a year or so of the FWB situation ending, we had 2 different instances where things slid back to essentially one-night hookups. But that was at least 5 years ago now. The issue is, as much as I thought I had actually moved on, as I have had other romantic relationships with other women, I keep finding myself in a place where I am not directly yearning to be with them, but when I hear about them going out with others, I can physically feel my heart in pain. I know it's super corny, but it is what it is. So at this point, I have kind of come to realize I have consistently been putting her needs above my own. At the end of the day it is a lose-lose situation for me and I feel like I need to protect myself and my feelings because I keep ending up in the same place of being hurt. Don't get me wrong, I wish I would feel happy for her. I want my friends to be happy and I want her to be happy, even if it's not with me. But for some reason, I keep ending up in this position of feeling hurt. Story 10. I ate her for telling my parents I didn't have a kid. They did, and they need to take care of her, not me. My parents had me 15F when they were 18 and 19. They always made it so obvious they resented being parents so young and added to that they never tried to be good parents. I typically spend most of my time at friends' houses. I don't have extended family to rely on. They disowned my parents for having me so young, So friends' houses were a positive in my life that made me feel more comfortable than being at home with my parents. My parents never did the typical parent stuff like helping with homework or showing up to support me at school. I don't think they ever attended a parents' conference for me. They ignored a lot of stuff I needed to get signed and I'd have to get right in their face on the last day to get signatures. My birthday and Christmas have never been a big deal or celebration. They do celebrate their wedding anniversary, but that's a them thing. When they told me 2 years ago they were expecting a baby, it really surprised me, but then it hurt because sometimes they said stuff that made me feel like I didn't exist. Like how they were so excited to have a baby and how they couldn't wait to be parents. A friend of my mom's did remind her of me, but then she and dad said I was basically the too early practice run and this was the real deal. When my sister was born, they were so attentive to her that I ceased to exist completely. I got sick and my school was trying to call someone to pick me up early, but they ignored the calls, and when I got home they had taken the baby out for a family day. When they got home they hadn't even realized the school called because they turned off their phones to enjoy family time. My mom quit her job a month after my sister was born. She wants to be a som and she and dad want at least one more kid. My dad leaves work early on Fridays so he can spend more time with the family, mom and sister. My parents tried to have another kid for over a year and mom isn't pregnant yet, so they're jumping to fertility treatments. They told me I need to watch my sister for a few hours every week while they attend those appointments, and they gave me this detailed list of stuff she needs and what I'm going to do with her. I told them I won't and that they had her so they need to take care of her because she's not my kid. My parents told me it's a few hours a week and not a huge deal. Dad told me I need to look at it as paying back all they did for me. I said no and told them they don't give a crap about me, so why would I want to help them? Aida. Story 11. Aida for yelling at a woman and her autistic daughter after they almost knocked me into the subway tracks. So this happened yesterday on my way to somewhere after work. I had just gotten off the subway and was walking on the platform to the stairs. It was a bit crowded since it was rush hour, so I walked across the platform, so I was walking closer to the opposite track. While I'm walking, someone crashes into my side and knocks me into the yellow part of the platform that you're not supposed to stand on while waiting for a train. People who have been to NYC will know what I am talking about. I almost lost my balance, and to make matters worse, a train was pulling in. I look in front of me, and I see 2 women walking by. One woman was walking in front and the other younger woman has holding on to the back of her backpack and swinging back and forth and not paying any attention to how she was walking. I yelled, "Hey, watch it." They just kind ignored me or didn't hear me, and I went closer to them and yelled again, "Hey, I'm talking to you, watch where you're going." The woman in front turned around and told me not to yell at her and her daughter, the younger woman, but still an adult. She was autistic and was sensitive in the subway. I told her that she and her daughter needed to be more careful. She almost knocked me into the tracks. The woman told me I was being rude and insensitive to her daughter's disability and stormed off. Aida. Story 12. I told my daughters that I was moving on with the separation anyway. I found out that my husband cheated on me when I was pregnant. Both times. I only found out 3 months ago, and until then we were a very happy family and my husband is a great dad. Our daughters are 14 and 16. They know the reason we are getting a divorce and that he had 2 affairs with 2 women, but not all the details. They are opposed to the idea of divorce anyway, and they threatened to never see me again if I went through with it because the offense happened so long ago. I understand that they don't want change and their lives in upheaval. I know all that, but I just can't be with him anymore. I can't even look at him. Nothing is working. Therapy is not working and they are adamant about never seeing me again. I haven't seen them in 2 months. We rent a small studio apartment now and we live every other week in the house with the girls and the other lives in the studio apartment. The girls refuse to stay with me at the house during my weeks, but they stay in the studio with my husband. Therapist said not to change the arrangement anyway because I thought maybe I should stay in the studio permanently so they have more room to live. We bought our house 2003 and it has quadrupled in value, so we are going to be able to have 2 decent homes, even if not as big and beautiful as this one, but it is not like they will be living in bad conditions. Before all this, they were close to both of us and loved us equally. Now they only love him. Last week they made it clear that if I filed for divorce, they will never see me again. I said I was never going back to him and they said I made my choice and they will never see me again. Story 13. Wanna keep our security deposits? We'll just keep your laptops. Okay, for context, my cousin goes to this private school that gives out these laptops at the beginning of the school year. These laptops hold the vast majority of their schoolwork and as such have custom software to limit their usage to said schoolwork. Because of all these factors, everyone who received one was instructed to pay a $200 security deposit that would not be returned if they lost theirs. On to the story. When the end of their school year came closer and people started returning their laptops, the school started claiming BS damages on the laptops and kept the deposits. Obviously, this didn't sit well with a lot of the students and parents who knew good and well there was no damage to speak of, and so they began to claim they simply lost them and let the school keep the deposit since they weren't getting it back in the first place. As more and more students did this, my cousin included, the school went full dictator mode and claimed to prevent students from graduating if they did not return their laptops, which again went against the signed agreement contract, and woo boy did that set off the powder keg. Several parents got their lawyers and filed a case against the school for breach of contract, and even the media got involved covering the corrupt school's policy. Students refused to attend the class for the final weeks, parents were protesting in front of the school lawn, even some faculty and staff quit. It was a whole thing. In the end, my cousin told me it ended up settled out of court because they couldn't take the bad PR anymore, and part of it was the return of the deposit for the laptop's return. However, she wasn't giving hers back and asked me to jailbreak the software, so it worked like a normal one and I did mostly just had to save her personal data then wipe the software from it. Some of you will comment, it's just $200. They didn't need lawyers if they were already paying for private school anyway. And to you I say, would you be okay being blatantly cheated out of extra money when you're already paying for a service? Because seriously, what did they expect to happen? That's several thousands of dollars spread out among several students. IDK the exact number, maybe 300. Of course they wouldn't just sit back and let you cheat them. Story 14. Retail Superhero. To premise this, I am a shift supervisor for a retail drugstore chain. Like a lot of retailers, we are having a very bad shoplifting problem. Thieves will come and fill bags with hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of merchandise and walk out. We are well aware that these are a part of much larger crime rings. Most are repeat offenders to the point where we have nicknames for them. We are told by our higher-ups to please tally up what was stolen, save the surveillance footage and file a police report along with store security report. Due to the repeat offenders, I created a file system in the office where we have the multiple reports filed under each nickname. For a few months we had a repeat offender who we nicknamed Tall. He was very tall, think 6 feet 4 inches to 6 feet 6 inches. He would come in and steal expensive skin and hair care, usually several $1,000s in one go. One day we see a man walk out with a large pillowcase full of merchandise. A customer tells us she saw him in the hair care section waiting for her to leave. I check the cameras and immediately recognize Tall. I get on the phone with police. While I'm on the phone, my employee gets a call from a customer. It's a man stating that the thief is at the park near the store. You hear a little girl in the background yelling, "Daddy, the bad man is in the bathroom." I relay the message to the dispatcher. I don't know if the customer had followed Tall or just happened to go to the park as well. Fast forward 30 minutes later, I get a call from a police officer asking if I could text him a picture of our thief. They have detained someone matching the general description. I comply. Fast forward another half hour and we have 2 police cars in front of our store and an officer asking who would like to make an eyewitness identification. My employee volunteers. After confirming, the officer comes in with a large drawstring bag full of merchandise. We are tallying everything up as the officer keeps removing stuff from the bag. It felt like a bad game show as the total went up. In total, nearly $2,000 worth of stolen merchandise. I grab Tall's file and give the officer all the other police reports we have on Tall. But this is only the beginning. A few days later I receive a call from an investigator with the police department. She has a few questions about Tall. She also mentions his girlfriend. A few days later she sends me an email stating that other retailers also have cases open with a suspect matching Tall's description and his girlfriend. Some are confirmed, others are in the process of confirming. Everything is slowly piling up. This week the investigator paid us a visit. She told us that Tall and his girlfriend have been charged with multiple felony counts. I won't say the exact number, but it's in the double digits. Their bail has also been set at a 7-figure mark. 2 prolific thieves got arrested and multiple cases were solved, all thanks to an observant customer who decided to call and let us know. Not all heroes wear capes or have martial arts skills. Some are armed with a phone and their superpower is being observant. As for the customer, he has never come forward, so we've never had the opportunity to thank him. Story 15. AITAH. Because I didn't invite my father to my wedding because years ago he told me I was no longer part of his family. I'm 28F and will be getting married next month. I didn't invite my father to the wedding, but now he's trying to get in touch. I think I need to explain the context, because it all started when I was 6 years old, when my parents got divorced after my dad cheated on my mom with my stepmother. After that, I spent most of my time with my mom, but during holidays and vacations, I stayed with my dad. When I was 8, my half-brother Jake 20M was born, and whenever I was with my dad, I was forced to take care of him. When I started high school, I had to move in with my dad because my mom had to move abroad for work. This period was one of the hardest of my life. My stepmother wasn't a bad person, she tried to include me in things, but she was very submissive to my father. As for my dad, he always treated me like an extra in the house, someone who didn't really belong there. I was constantly responsible for taking care of Jake, and whenever he went out, he would only take my stepmother and Jake, never inviting me. One of the most painful experiences happened when I was 14. My dad announced that the whole family was going to Disney for vacation, but the day before the trip, he told me that he wanted it to be a family moment, their first big trip with Jake. So, I was left home alone. This had already become a pattern. Trips to the beach, zoos, or other outings always included just my stepmother and Jake while I was left behind. My dad didn't like me going out with friends or inviting them over. He said, teenagers together only cause trouble, and because he was controlling, he would call the house phone at random times to check if I was home. He also had a trusted neighbor who would keep an eye on me to make sure I didn't have any visitors. When I turned 16, living with him, the feeling of being an extra only got worse. Everything I had experienced during vacations, the exclusion and sense of abandonment, became part of my daily life. Things came to a head when I turned 18. My dad got a promotion at work and decided to take a family trip to Europe. Since it was my last year of high school, I was excited, thinking I'd finally be included. But then he told me he didn't have enough money for a trip for 4, so it would just be to celebrate Jake's 10th birthday. I had to stay home. That's when I snapped. I told him he was being unfair and that he shouldn't have given me false hope. I explained how I'd felt over the past years, and he called me ungrateful and spoiled, saying that I lived with him rent-free, which was a lie since my mom sent money to support me and I did all the housework because both he and my stepmother worked late. The argument escalated, and he kicked me out of the house, saying I was no longer part of the family and not even his daughter. He literally threw me out and tossed my things onto the sidewalk. Luckily, a friend lived nearby, and I stayed at her place that night. The next day, I went back to see if my dad had calmed down, but I found my things still on the sidewalk, and some even in the trash. My stepmother had kindly saved a few items for me and handed them over. After that, my dad never reached out, except to call and yell at me a month later when my mom stopped sending him money for my expenses. A few months later, I got into an engineering program in another state, where I met my now fiancé, Mark 29M. He was a senior, and we soon connected, realizing we had a lot in common. We started dating, graduated, and now work in the same field, though at different companies. A few months ago, Mark proposed, and I happily said yes. I have social media, but I rarely use it. I've had Instagram for about 6 years but haven't even posted 10 pictures. I think one of my relatives must have told my dad about the wedding because, about a month after I accepted the proposal, he reached out to me through Instagram, saying he was excited to help with the wedding. I was surprised, both that he had messaged me and that he genuinely thought he would walk me down the aisle. I responded, saying he wouldn't be walking me down the aisle because my stepfather would, and that the wedding would be small, just for my close family. After that, I blocked him. After blocking him and inspired by reading Reddit stories, I expected calls, messages, and even letters full of insults like, ungrateful, or, spoiled. However, the only thing I received was a letter delivered by Jake. Yes, we still have contact. In the letter, my father expressed how sorry he was. I won't copy the exact words, but to summarize, he said that after kicking me out, he lived a normal life with my stepmother and Jake. But when he saw pictures of my graduation with my mom and stepfather, he started feeling regret. He wanted to talk to me, but his pride held him back. He only decided to reach out now because he realized that his pride got him nowhere and that he wanted to fulfill one of the plans he made when I was born, to pay for my wedding and walk me down the aisle. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I've moved on with my life, and his attempt at redemption after so many years feels a bit too convenient. I ate for not wanting to include my dad in my wedding despite his apology. Note: my stepfather is an amazing person. He always goes out of his way to include me in everything, and my stepsisters are wonderful as well. When he found out that my father hadn't taken me to Disney, he planned a trip for the next holiday and took me, along with my mother and sisters. This and 1,000 other reasons why I want to walk down the aisle with him. Edit 1. People are asking why my mom and stepfather left me with my dad and what their jobs are. My mom works as a programmer and managed to get a job abroad. She thought it was best to accept it, especially since she wanted to save up a good amount of money to cover college expenses and for the future. My stepfather is a researcher and was doing his postdoctoral work at the time. The first person to talk to me was my older stepsister. 2 days after I was kicked out, she came to see me and even stayed for a few days, which I can barely remember because I was just crying. But I didn't move in with her because she lives in another state, and I was almost done with classes and final exams. So, my friend and bridesmaid let me stay at her house. Her parents helped me gather my things and even set up the guest room for me. Story 16. I ate of her, shutting down my living room. I 22F, I'm a married 27M, Som with a 15mo daughter. Recently my family came to visit us for a week. My mom, 41, is staying in our spare bedroom. My aunt and uncle came with their kids as well, but they are staying in a hotel. I told my mom that I have rules about my home, pretty simple rules, nothing over the top. No shoes on the rug, don't eat food in the living room, drinks and snacks are fine, put your dish in the dishwasher when done, and once I go to bed the living room is shut down. By shut down I mean do not go in it. I clean my living room before bed. Vacuum the floors, fix and vacuum the cushions, wipe down the coffee tables, etc. Anyways, I go out to the living room in the morning and there is a cup ring on my coffee table, I have coasters, the cushions are messed up, and a red sauce stain on my rug. I was livid, mainly of the sauce stain on the rug. The rug is literally brand new, and a light beige color. I waited until my mom woke up and confronted her about the living room. She told me I was being overdramatic, the stain will come out, the rule is stupid, blah blah blah. Long story short, I told her my house, my rules, and if she couldn't go by my rules she needed to leave. So, she left and went to my aunt's hotel. My aunt is blowing up my phone telling me that I am being unreasonable and they paid all the money to come see us. I told her I wasn't being unreasonable, I have very simple rules and I just wanted to be respected in my own home. Am I the stain won't come out and I am extremely disappointed. I tried to move the rug around and have the coffee table cover it, but where it's at there's no way to hide it. Edit never did I tell her she couldn't exit her bedroom. I have a kitchen island that has seats and a dining room where she could have eaten, plus the bedroom she was in has a TV and a couch. Also it takes long to clean my living room because I go through the cushions to find snacks my daughter may have dropped throughout the day. My daughter is in the stage where she puts everything in her mouth no matter what it is and I do not want her to eat old food. She also hides her cup which normally has milk in it. Where I live mice and pests are extremely common, the last thing I'd want is mice or roaches in my home because of loose food. Edit 2. The rule is not permanent. It is just until my daughter grows out of the stage of putting everything in her mouth. Also my mom and I have never had a great relationship, so my going off the way I did is probably just pelt up emotions towards her. I have people over all the time and people commonly spend the night, mostly like a week at a time, and we've never had a problem, because my whole home is open to them. I just ask they don't use the living room until morning, since my daughter will make a mess of it anyways. As I've stated in the comments, I do not pick up throughout the day and I know children are messy. If something drops on the rug I immediately clean it, it's no big deal. The problem is she left a red sauce stain on my beige carpet all night. I wouldn't have cared if it wasn't for the stain and the coaster ring. My mom isn't and never has been a tidy person, but I always have been and did most of the cleaning growing up. Edit 3. I'm tired of seeing the "you have OCD" comments. To everyone saying this, you clearly do not understand what OCD is and you shouldn't be diagnosing someone without a degree. It is not a compulsion to clean my living room. I put the mental energy to make sure it is clean once a day. Plus there are people insinuating that I need to keep it clean all the time, I do not. I clean once a day. Besides cleaning up my kitchen as I make dinner, and if a drink spills I will spot clean the rug. It waits until my husband and child have gone to bed. I do it as a settle down, I like routines and it has become a staple of my alone time and routine. IDK about you, but I love to wake up to my home clean, even if I know it will be destroyed throughout the day. On another note, I did not kick my mother out. I asked her to either respect my home or leave and she made her choice. In her words, I was being stupid, and you cannot tell me what I can and cannot do because I am your mother. Story 17. Some people refuse to take no for an answer. Bed, Bath & Beyond story. Years ago, I was working as a bartender at the same bar and grill as my fiancé. Our work uniform was a black pair of pants and a blue button-down shirt. We were on a break between lunch and dinner and decided to drop into the Bed, Bath & Beyond right down the road to create a gift registry for our upcoming wedding. The very helpful and polite staff gave us a UPC reader, which looked like Marvin the Martian's gun, to scan items we wanted to place on the registry list. As we were debating which kitchen gear to scan, a woman pushing a cart approached us and began blurting some question out. I quickly looked up and responded, "I'm sorry, but we don't work here." This woman instantly twisted off. Her face went purple. She hissed at me, "Yes, you do." To which, I responded, "Look, I get it, we are dressed alike, but we don't work here." As you might expect, this only further enraged her. She went on to ask why we had the merchandise scanner, and I politely explained our upcoming wedding and the registry. Again, she was not having it. She cussed at us, then stormed off. I guess she really did not appreciate our laughter, because she returned 2 more times to call us liars and to yell at us. What really did it was when she called my fiancé a bitch. I invited her to perform a sexual act upon herself. This was when an actual employee showed up and informed her that she would be happy to help her if she calmed down. Never tell a crazy bitch to calm down. Never. This woman went into orbit about how we were all liars and were laughing at her behind her back. I thought I was going to have to physically restrain my soon-to-be wife from punching the psycho. The last thing we heard as we were exiting the building was the actual employee yelling something about a fucking name tag. Since this day around 25 years ago, I have been stopped multiple times in the grocery store because I was wearing all black clothing common in the restaurant and catering business. Usually, it only takes 2 instances of forceful statements of, "I do not work here," with eye contact to get them to walk away. For reference, I am not a small guy, and really not someone you would want to mess with, but people are insane. I literally had to go hands-on with a gentleman who insisted that I owed him an apology for not assisting him. He had grabbed my shirt and would not let go. This was during the COVID lockdown, so I assume he was off his meds. Moral of this story: do not let anyone enter your personal space and practice situational awareness. The loonies do not always come with a sign. Story 18. Aida for making my stepdaughter do more chores than my son. My husband and I, both 47, brought 1 child each into our marriage, his daughter 24 and my son 22. My husband and I have been married for 17 years and we all get along for the most part. The biggest continuing issue we have is that I make my stepdaughter do more chores, and that's almost always been the case. I work 30 to 40 hours a week and my husband works around 50, so I handle a lot more of the household and child care. She often complained to her father, who complained to me, but I felt like he agreed more with me because he only mentioned she complained and let it go. The chores were fairly light and even through elementary school for both of them. When they got to middle school though, my son started taking advanced placement classes, which have more homework. He also started doing some volunteer work, mentoring younger kids. He's always been very scholarship-minded because he knew we didn't have a lot to save back. The chores were still pretty even, but on days when his tutoring, mentoring ran late, I did them. I didn't do the same for her when she was out later with friends. She has always been well liked with lots of friends because she has a very bright, fun personality. In HS, my son picked up more volunteer hours, college prep and AP classes, and got a job. He paid for his extras, and she had to earn her allowance. That's when the bigger discrepancy happened. Now he's going into his graduate program, doing research, working 2 part-time jobs, and still tutoring on the side. We pay for his housing, food, etc. so he can save some money. She's still very much a social butterfly and I love that she has so many people who love her. But she has no job, no college, and isn't trying to get either. We've offered to help her any way we can, but she just says she's too busy. So she has far more chores than him. Apparently she complained more to her father and he has finally decided I need to balance it out more. I don't even know how when my son has so little time and told him no. They both say I'm being unfair and the more I think about it, I don't know. Aida. Edit. Her chores are to sweep, dust when necessary, and wash bedding and towels once a week. Her allowance is $1,000 per month from her father. His chores are take out the trash, load the dishwasher, cook his own food. He also helps with outside chores when asked. He declined an allowance because he knows we are trying to save money ourselves and he has a job. I do the cooking, mopping, kitchen and bathroom cleaning myself. Story 19. My 27F fiancé 26M set boundaries around what I can talk about with him. Is this healthy? Essentially the title. My fiancé and I have been dating for 4 years, engaged for 8 months. Over the last 2 years, he's asked me not to talk about or drastically limit how much I talk about certain topics, including work, niche topics that I've extensively researched and really enjoy, and our wedding. Today, he added the cat I recently rescued to the list. This has severely limited the topics that I talk to him about and made me feel that he just doesn't want me to talk. This is backed up by comments that he's made about how monotonous and hard to listen to my voice is. Writing this out, I totally understand that I sound like a boring person, but he knew most of these things about me coming into the relationship. We knew each other before we started dating. However, I understand that those things aren't everyone's cup of tea. I used to talk at length about these topics, but I've worked really hard not to talk about them too much with him. I even set daily reminders on my phone not to talk about the topics that bother him until it became a habit. Initially, he said I didn't need to set the reminders, but he was noticeably happier when I started talking less in general. Meanwhile, he continues to talk at length about the similar topics that he's asked me not to work in his favorite topics to research. When I've brought up what I felt like was a double standard, he said that anyone could understand and relate to his work, whereas he doesn't understand mine. I've also made an effort to at least listen to and encourage his research topics, even though they're not my thing, and he says that these are the only things he has to unwind outside of work, a physical, public-facing job. It does make me sad. I believe in encouraging people's favorite topics, and I'd really love to have that reciprocated from my partner. Instead, the list keeps getting longer. When I want to give him important updates on my work, like that I'm going after another job, I have to preface my update with, "I'll make this quick," or 2-minute update, and even then he looks like he's been forced to endure. Several times, when those things, especially work, which has been especially rough for me this year, are all I can think about, I find myself with very little to say that won't go against the boundaries he's set, but I still want desperately to talk to someone. On those days, weeks, we'll have very surface-level conversations. Especially then, I talk a lot to our 3 cats and now the rescue cat, mostly nonsense things about how sweet they are in silly made-up scenarios, and then we just slow blink at each other back and forth. It's great. This upsets my fiancé. He's made comments about how he'd have to act like a cat if he wants me to talk to him and give him attention. I've explained that I'm just going through stuff at work, and don't want to talk his ear off about it. I've tried having conversations about how to resolve this so we both get what we need, but he usually turns it back on me in some way. This can't be healthy, right? Or am I overthinking it, missing something? We're about 2 months out from the wedding, and I'm struggling to finish wedding DIYs because of what this would mean for the rest of my life. Tia for any advice. Story 20. AITAH for ruining my sister's wedding. I, 27F, have been dealing with PCOS for the past year, which has caused me to gain some weight. It's been tough, but I'm managing the best I can with the right diet, exercise regime. My sister 30F got engaged and asked me to be a bridesmaid, which I was really excited about. We both work at the same company, and I've helped her build a lot of connections there. I got her the job and I've introduced her to important work networks and helped her grow professionally. About 2 months before the wedding, my sister called me and said she was reorganizing the bridal party and that I was being removed as a bridesmaid. When I pressed her on why, she finally admitted that it was because of my weight gain. She didn't think I'd look right in the photos and said she had a certain aesthetic for her wedding. The bridesmaid dresses she had planned for the wedding were size XXM and I am a large. I was devastated and absolutely furious, rightfully so. It wasn't just hurtful, it was also humiliating, especially coming from someone I had supported so much through her entire life. I was angry and couldn't stop thinking about it. So many of my colleagues knew how much I had done to help her in her career. So, in a moment of frustration, I told a few coworkers what she had said and why I'd been demoted from the bridal party. Word spread quickly, and now pretty much the whole office knows that I was removed, and the reason why. A lot of the people she works closely with have decided not to go to her wedding out of support for me and because they think she is a terrible person, as a lot of the other people we work with are on the larger side. Now, my sister is absolutely furious at me and says I've ruined her reputation and her big day. She's claiming I've sabotaged her professionally at work and socially because now all her friends know what she did, but some family members, especially my mom, are siding with her, saying I took it too far by airing our personal business at work. So, I ate her for telling my coworkers what my sister said about me, which led to them boycotting her wedding.